All right, the IPs, they're completely blind to the tribe. They have no idea what's going on. They don't take in any social feedback. How do they even manage to have any friends or any social relevance at all? I know you're not supposed to defend your type, but I already put it in the poo-poo of the IPs, so now I feel like I can come back and save the day and defend them. Just like any good abusive relationship. All right, this is inspired by a Q&A by the OPS team a couple of weeks ago about Sam Altman, who is an INTP. And he's asked about the perspective of, what do you think Elon Musk thinks of you and whatever you're doing? Let's roll a clip.
Well, you gotta watch this with the IPs. They cannot tell you somebody else's point of view. They will find a sneaky way of dodging the question. So watch the switcheroo.
Elon Musk
Yes.
was an early investor in your company. He's since left. Do you and he speak anymore?
We do.
And what does he say to you off the Twitter?
I have tremendous respect for Elon. Obviously we have some different opinions about how AI should go, but I think we fundamentally agree on more than we disagree on.
What do you think you agree most about?
That getting this technology right and figuring out how to navigate the risks is super important to the future of humanity.
Well, that's your point of view. What was Elon's? He's like, I think Elon and I agree a lot. See, that's the IP. Hey, tell me about this person. They're really awesome because they agree with me. You gotta look for it.
All right, sometimes I watch something and I'm like, did I watch the same clip? This is clearly some dude who is trying to avoid the question. And if I were him and I was on the news and I was running a company that had such a public spotlight, I also wouldn't take the bait and answer this stupid question about what does Elon Musk think? How could I possibly answer that question in a way that wouldn't cause some chaos with the tribe? Do we really think Sam Altman doesn't know what Elon Musk thinks? He just says that they speak regularly. Elon Musk was on the board. We all know Elon. I'm sure he cussed everyone out as he exited the building. Hell, even I know what Elon Musk thinks of OpenAI. Even Google knows. Where's my phone? What does Elon Musk think of Sam Altman and OpenAI?
According to Fortune, this year, Musk has expressed disgust with the direction taken by OpenAI, and in July he launched XAI, which he said...
Yada, 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 yada. All right, so clearly it's not missing information because you can literally Google the answer to that question. Am I missing something? Then it hit me. I'm stupid. I'm taking this literally. And if it doesn't make sense to you either, maybe you're stupid too. Maybe you're a thinker like me, taking things as logic when they're just expressions. Or maybe you got sensory somewhere, and so you're taking things at face value. Well, don't worry. After 5 years into this personality science thing, I think I got the answer to this one. All the smart kids who got it already, you can go home. Just go home. This is for the dum-dums. This is for the people who have been dropped on their heads one too many times like you and me. Gather around my tribe. I'll explain it to you in the simple way that my simple mind can understand it. Okay, the first thing you have to remember, we're going to write it on the screen, is that your last function is just more unconscious. It's not that you don't do it. It's not that you can't do it. It's on autopilot, which means that you have a little bit less confidence in doing it consciously. If someone pushes back on it, you kind of flop over oftentimes. And so when you have to bring the information that is in that function to the conscious, which is you might need to do to explain it, you struggle a little bit. It's a little bit slower. And sure, maybe you also do it a little bit less. And I think a really good example is like Dave talking about NI at the top. Is he going to say that the NIs completely don't take in any sensory? Of course, that wouldn't make any literal sense because otherwise, how are they able to drive? How are they able to play sports? There's a lot of NI at the top that play sports and do like a very high sensory thing. They're still able to do it. So let's see what Dave says about NI at the top.
The NI is like kind of annoying. It kind of makes you dyslexic and it's hard to get your words out and it's hard to like explain or prove what it is that you're seeing. But a lot of times like kind of what you're seeing, you're on the right track. You're not usually way off, just maybe hard to prove it or whatever.
All right, so it's hard to explain what it is that you're seeing, but usually you're seeing something that's there. So your intuition is right, but it's hard to pull out and discuss the sensory facts that you're basing your intuition on in a very clear way because you take in the sensory if you're NI first in an unconscious way. It's not that you don't do it. It's not that your patterns are completely based on nothing. Your patterns are based on the sensory at the bottom. And so this is point number two. Point number two is that your information from your last function is baked into your first function. All right, so if your first function is an observer function, it's single observing because your last function is baked into the first function. Let's take NI at the top. You're taking in sensory. You're doing it in an unconscious way, so you don't necessarily remember your sources of where you got the information. It's just kind of passively being brought in. And the way that sensory manifests itself in your life is through a pattern that is conscious, and a narrowed down pattern that's conscious. And they prefer not to share all the examples that that's based on because maybe they're not good examples, or maybe that's actually not the example that they base that pattern on. In fact, there's another good clip about that. Let's roll that too.
Once I have to access sensory, it's a weird thing I can physically feel in my brain. I'll feel something like switch. It's like you're like, you don't know it. Like if you're like, oh, I can give an example. Like, okay, then go ahead. And I'm like, okay, hold on. Let me just
missing information.
Hold on. I got a ton of examples. I can give you an example.
It takes time to pile. So how would you ever know your ginormous pile?
Even when I have a bunch of good examples, there's a veil. I can't easily get to them.
So you have difficulty accessing it, but it's there and you do have examples. But the problem with having your fourth function baked into your first is that everybody else has to take your word for it. So maybe you gathered a diverse set of sensory that's representative of the information that's out there, but we wouldn't know because you're not sharing it with us. But if you're NI at the top, you're going to have a disinclination to do that, because then you might have to throw away your intuition, even though it actually is based on good sensory, just because you couldn't come up with the right sensory on the spot. You can imagine that then a nightmare scenario for someone NI at the top is that they're on the news and someone just ambushes them with new information. It's like, here are some counterexamples that I've found, and I'm presenting it to you live on the show. Please give me your response. They're not going to want to get into that back and forth. Who would? My fellow asshole and double observer, like Sam Harris. That's a perfect situation that Sam Harris would be good at. You can imagine if you're NI at the top, it would be really annoying if the one time you do share some sensory, like a clip, and some double observer is like, this clip doesn't really line up to the example that you're giving. And here's another clip of you saying something that implies a different intuition. That'd be really fucking annoying. That would be like someone taking my clips and being like, I think that was over the line. Oh, and look at this. Don't you think he was being a little bit weird there? I would find that difficult because even though I do have an opinion about what is appropriate, I don't feel confident enough to be able to fight on that. So going back to this clip, like being on the news, that's not a safe environment. That's not like being, a little coffee time. Like, so what did you think that Elon Musk thinks about you? Well, I think he's kind of being a jerk and da-da-da-da. No, this is high stakes. Everything that you say is going to show up on the news. And so you're going to go back to whatever is the safest for you. And for an IP, especially for TI at the top, I don't want to get in this discussion of like, Elon said this about you. What do you think about that? Do you think that was okay for him to say? Like, man, I don't know. I don't want to get dragged into this values discussion. Was it right or wrong for him to do that? Whether he has a right to do that or not, or whether it's good for society or not. It's just like, can I get back to freaking running my company? Because I'm going to say some shit and it's like, Sam Altman said that Elon Musk is a jerk. And then my PR team's like, man, why did you say that? I don't know. Because I'm not as quick as sharp in that area. I'm not going to want to do it. It's not that you can't, but to take a few steps back and to kind of defend Dave's original point, the danger with single deciding or single observing is because the person's not publicly accountable to going back and forth on like for example, in this case, the tribe's values and your personal motivations. People in general don't really know to what degree have you taken in the tribe perspective. Maybe you have and maybe you haven't. You don't have an open book in that scenario. In the same way, imagine an INTJ, it's like, okay, just give me the source of all your data. Give me what your pattern is and give me the examples and go back and forth on that. Because who do we have to rely on? The single individual on whether the observation is correct or whether the decision is correct. Because we're not allowed to see their work.
There's no super high IQ. Medical doctors aren't the smartest ones. That when you're super high IQ, 145 to 155, you become an astrophysicist. Almost always.
Right.
Navy SEALs are like 80% psychopaths. America is a certain personality type. People move, and it's been that way for hundreds of years. The French used to call America the merchants. People who like money genetically have moved to America. That's why we're the best at making money. All of life breaks into these SSG, self-selected groups.
Basically, we need to put this you can't do your last function. We're going to put that shit to rest, man. Or everyone's saying ISFPs get this the worst. Look at you. You did your little baby and I. Oh, look at you. Oh, such a smart ESFP. You're doing some logic. What's that supposed to mean? No. I'm just saying that for you, because you're not that smart type, you did a little bit. That's so much, so good. That's so good. It's like, what are people thinking? How could you possibly think this is going to get a positive reaction? I'm friggin' Demon FE. And if I know that shit, shame on you that you're saying some dumbass thing that can never possibly ever get a good reaction. So stupid. Shame. Dude, forget about FE. I had an ISFJ say that to me once, SIFE. It must be really difficult for you to not pick up on any social cues. What is that like? Bro, come here. Sit next to me. You and I, we're on the same boat. We're equally socially inept if you're saying some dumbass shit like that. Trust me. Anyway, this is all to say, just everyone stop being such a dipshit. Is that really the point of the video? Close enough. I'll catch you next time. The color of this changed, didn't it? Because this used to be purple. I swear to God. How the fuck is it red now? I'm not that demon sensory. I swear just turned off. Also, I'm going to do like a newsletter. Don't subscribe to it if you're not going to read it. There's a lot of TI thoughts that don't make it into videos because they're either too complicated or too personal. So letting these precious thoughts die with me. I'm going to post it on this freaking thing.